In 1993, at the height of Grand Prix racing, Wayne Rainey crashed at Misano. There was no collision, no dramatic battle, no rival to blame. One fast corner, a sudden loss of control, and in a single moment, the most dominant rider of the era was thrown into the gravel. Wayne Rainey survived the crash, but he suffered a severe spinal cord injury that left him paralyzed from the chest down. At just 33 years old, his racing career ended forever. The rider would never stand on a grid again. More than 30 years later, at 65, Wayne Rainey doesn't talk about that day with anger. He talks about what led there, because crashes like that don't come out of nowhere. From the outside, Rainey's career looked flawless. 3 consecutive world titles, total control of the brutal 500cc era, a rider who rarely made mistakes. But inside the helmet, racing felt like pressure without relief. In the most dangerous period of Grand Prix racing, hate wasn't personal. It was professional. It was the feeling created by rivals who erased your safest options, by comparisons that turned victories into questions, by expectations that never allowed weakness, even after you won. At 65, Rainey doesn't describe hatred as emotion. He describes it as weight. The weight of knowing that one mistake meant everything was over. The weight of understanding that greatness always demands a price. This is not a story about enemies. It is a story about 3 people who shaped the pressure that defined Wayne Rainey's life on a motorcycle. And in the end, pressure always collects. Kevin Schwantz created a kind of pressure Wayne Rainey could never escape. Rainey's greatness was built on control, on discipline, on the belief that championships were won by reducing risk, not chasing it. Schwantz represented the opposite. He didn't race seasons. He raced moments. Every corner was treated like a final lap. Late braking that ignored margins. Entries that dared you to follow or disappear. That was the pressure Rainey hated most. Against Schwantz, Rainey couldn't simply manage a race. He had to react. The safest line was no longer safe because Schwantz would dive underneath it. The calculated overtake was no longer enough because Schwantz would turn it into a confrontation. Every lap demanded a decision Rainey despised making. Do I stay true to who I am, or do I survive this race by becoming someone else? This is where hatred formed. Not hatred of the man, but hatred of the situation he created. At circuits like Laguna Seca, where the track punished hesitation, Schwantz erased comfort entirely. Rainey knew he could beat him over a season. But in any single race, control could vanish in an instant. That uncertainty followed Rainey everywhere. It followed him into braking zones, into qualifying laps, into moments when leading the race should have felt safe, but didn't. Years later, both men admitted what it was. Rainey described their early relationship as not very friendly. Schwantz said it more honestly than anyone ever had. At the beginning, it was hatred, and that hatred came from pressure that never switched off. Rainey hated racing Kevin Schwantz because Schwantz forced him to abandon the very philosophy that made him great. He forced him to brake later than he believed in, to accept chaos instead of calculation, to win races while feeling exposed. Rainey collected championships. He mastered seasons. But Schwantz made every individual race feel unstable. That is the deepest reason Wayne Rainey hated racing Kevin Schwantz. Because Schwantz didn't just threaten his results, he threatened his sense of control. And when control disappears, pressure becomes constant and unforgiving. Eddie Lawson created pressure without ever needing to touch Wayne Rainey on track. Lawson was already a standard before Rainey became a champion, a multiple world champion, a Yamaha reference, the definition of what an American rider was supposed to be in the 500cc era. When Rainey started winning, the question was never whether he was fast enough. The question was whether he was Lawson enough. That comparison never stopped. In 1989, with Rainey, Lawson, and Kevin Schwantz locked in a three-way title fight, the pressure intensified. Every result was measured against Lawson's legacy. Every mistake felt amplified. Every win came with an asterisk. Rainey later admitted his frustration when he felt the situation turning political rather than purely competitive, famously remarking that, at times, it looked like Team Yamaha against me. Lawson didn't need to block Rainey's lines or force late-breaking battles. His presence did something more corrosive. He turned Rainey's victories into arguments. He turned championships into debates. He made Rainey feel like he was constantly defending his right to belong at the top. That is why this pressure was so difficult to escape. You can race a rival. You can outscore him. But you cannot outrun a comparison that lives inside your own garage. Rainey didn't hate Eddie Lawson, the man. He hated what Lawson represented. Because as long as Lawson existed as the benchmark, Rainey was never allowed to simply be champion. He had to prove that he deserved the title every single time. Kenny Roberts created the kind of pressure Wayne Rainey could never race away from. Unlike his rivals, Roberts didn't line up beside Rainey on the grid. He stood behind him, watching everything. Roberts was the man who opened the door to the 500cc world. The mentor, the team owner, the standard setter. And that was the problem. With Kenny Roberts, winning was never enough. Rainey didn't just have to be fast. He had to be correct, technically perfect, mentally disciplined, relentlessly professional. Mistakes were not lessons. They were weaknesses. Inside Team Roberts, pressure didn't disappear after the checkered flag. It followed Rainey back into the garage, into debriefs, into silence. There was no celebration culture, only expectation. Rainey later admitted that Kenny Roberts demanded more from him than any rival ever did. Not because he doubted him, but because he believed that anything less than perfection was unacceptable at the top level. That belief shaped Rainey's entire approach to racing. It made him stronger, more precise, more ruthless with himself. And that is where the hatred formed. Not hatred of the man, but hatred of never being allowed to feel finished. Schwantz threatened Rainey on track. Lawson challenged his legitimacy. But Kenny Roberts controlled the environment Rainey lived in every single day. You can escape rivals at the finish line. You cannot escape your team owner. That is why this pressure cut the deepest. Because it came from the person who made Wayne Rainey a champion and never allowed him to rest as one. In the end, none of them put Wayne Rainey in a wheelchair. There was no rival to blame, no reckless contact, no single moment of betrayal. But pressure has a way of adding up. Kevin Schwantz taught him that control could vanish in a heartbeat. Eddie Lawson made him defend his legitimacy even when he was winning. Kenny Roberts never allowed him to relax. Not before the race, not after it. Each pressure was different. Together, they formed a life where margins disappeared. Rainey raced in an era that demanded perfection without forgiveness. One mistake meant everything was over. In 1993, at Misano, that truth arrived without warning. Wayne Rainey survived, but the rider never raced again. At 65, Rainey doesn't speak with bitterness. He doesn't rewrite the past. He doesn't search for excuses. He accepts the price. Because for him, greatness was never free. It was borrowed, paid back with consequences. Some riders retire quietly. Some walk away when the risk becomes too high. Wayne Rainey didn't get that choice. What remains is not hatred. It is understanding. Understanding that pressure builds champions. And sometimes it takes everything in return.